Alright, so here we go. So in this is going to be our first notes for the course. It will be pretty much similar the rest of the way. You should have a guided note sheet that you need to fill in as I'm going over these. If you have any questions about this, please email me, Skype me, do something, and let me know that if you have any questions. So the first thing we need to think about in this course is what is biology and what is life. And if you know, usually probably from your middle science classes that you've taken, they've probably defined biology, which is bio, which is life, and ology, which is the study. So biology is the study of life. Biology is a very broad spectrum of things, living things, but you can get much more specific, and there are other branches of biology, such as ecology, which is also pretty broad, which is just, ecology is just the study of all living things in their environment and the interactions that occur there in that environment. And then also genetics we have, which is the study of traits and how they're passed on from one individual to another. And then microbiology is the study of microscopic organisms. Usually need to be seen with a microscope, but very, very small. Often bacteria, when people hear the word microbiology, is what they think of. And then anatomy, and also we have some other ones I haven't listed here, but another one is zoology, and everybody's gone to the zoo, and you go to the zoo to see animals, so that's the study of animals. And then maybe you guys are familiar with this one, which is botany. This is the study of plants. And then there's some much more less common ones, such as herpetology. You might know this one. It's the study of reptiles. And then also have entomology. Entomology, I hope I spelled that right. That's birds, or aves. So there's many different branches. You can get very specific in, even in the botany, you can get even more specific in what you study. But biology is very broad, living things. So then we go on. The big question here, though, in any biology course, so what is a living thing? How do you classify whether something is living or not? When you reach down and pick an object off the ground, when you're walking on a trail, down the street, if you pick something up and you want to determine whether it's living or not, how do you do that? Well, we're going to look at the 8 basic characteristics. I want you to keep in mind these characteristics as we go through this course, because many of the functions or the processes that we study, such as mitosis, such as osmosis, such as diffusion, they all come back to these characteristics that a living thing has to meet in order to stay alive. So please keep that in mind. So the main characteristics, number 1 is all living things are made up of cells. In order for something to be a living thing, it has to have cells. So if you pick an object off the ground, you ask yourself, does it have cells? And cells are very small, though, so it's not something you can probably look at. So you probably have to cut a piece off, put it under a microscope, and look at it to see whether it has cells or not. But if it's a living thing, it has cells. Maybe just one cell, such as a bacteria, or maybe it has many, many things. Maybe it's multicellular, but it has to have cells. And then also keep in mind that that cells can meet all these rest of these 7 characteristics of living things, because the cells are the basic unit. Let's add that. The basic unit of all living things. And so they can, all the rest of the characteristics, they meet. They can do them. They have to be able to do them. So the next one is reproduce. All living things have to have the ability to reproduce. So a grasshopper has to produce more grasshoppers, or there won't be any grasshoppers. And a plant has to produce new plants, or there won't be any. The two methods they use for reproduction are sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is the use of gametes, a cell that has DNA in it that combines with another cell that has DNA in it to produce a zygote. And we'll learn about these terms, exactly what they mean, later in the course if you're not sure. But sexual reproduction requires gametes, which is like a sperm and an egg coming together. Asexual reproduction requires one individual. So a cell can split in two, and that's asexual reproduction. You have one organism, it splits in two, you have two. Those two split in half, you have four. That's asexual, an example of asexual reproduction. You only need one parent. Okay, so then you have the next one is universal genetic code. This is also known as 3 letters, DNA. All living things have a genetic code, and it's DNA. DNA is an acronym. It stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. And it's really revolutionized science over the last 30-40 years. Watson and Crick were the ones that came up with the model of what DNA actually looks like. People like Rosalind Franklin, Hershey, Barbara Hershey, I think it's Barbara, that's an actor. Barbara Hershey, I don't know. A scientist, young woman scientist named Hershey, also worked on DNA. Many people over the years, until Watson and Crick came up with the structure of DNA and what it really is. So universal genetic code. Every living thing has it. Every cell has it, pretty much. Okay. So cells meet all of these so far. Then grow and develop. So all living things have a basic egg, and then they can move to adult. Okay. So they grow and develop over their life. Cells are the same way. Maybe they're not an egg, okay, but they're a new cell. They go through interphase, then mitosis, then they produce new cells. So they have like a lifespan. Humans have a lifespan there. They start out as an egg. They are a baby, and then adolescent, and then a teenager, then they become an adult. They grow and develop as they age or get older. All living things do it. Cells do it. Okay. Then also number 5, all living things have the ability to obtain materials and make them into energy. Some organisms, such as plants, can use sunlight, make their own food, and then use that food to create their own energy. Those are autotrophs. Heterotrophs are organisms that eat autotrophs. So, like a cow, it eats grass. It eats that grass because it can't produce its own energy, so that it eats something that can, and then it gets its energy from that. Now humans are omnivores, or also heterotrophs. We may eat a cow, and then the cow eats the plant, and indirectly we get the energy that way. Or we may just be a vegetarian and eat vegetables or whatever we're going to eat there. But somehow we obtain materials to make energy. Cells do the same thing. Just like a human being has to complete all these different functions to remain alive, a cell has to do the same thing. And then we have number 6 is respond to their environment. So all organisms, including cells, because they're the basic unit of all living things, have the ability, or must have the ability, to respond to their environment. So as things that change in their environment, they can change and respond to it. And really 6 and 7 are kind of tied together. The idea of homeostasis. Organisms want to keep a stable internal state or environment. Human beings, or humans, have a body temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, it's a pretty general temperature. Most people are going to have that temperature. Now, your temperature might be a little bit lower, your temperature might be a little bit higher, but whatever your temperature is, it stays stable. Cells like to do that. They don't like conditions to constantly change. And living things don't like the conditions to constantly temperature be high, low, high, low. So they they work to keep it the same, and that's homeostasis. And many of the functions we'll study, such as mitosis, such as diffusion, such as osmosis, those all work to accomplish homeostasis. And cells do this as well. Okay, and then also change over time. All living things have the ability to change as well as in response to their environment. So not only can they respond and do something, they can also change. Okay, a good example is a snowshoe hare. Okay, in the winter, lots of snow on the ground. In the winter, they have white fur. Hard to see them. They can run fast, but when you think about an owl flying in the air and you think about foxes, they can also run pretty fast and they can fly pretty fast. So you have snowshoe hare has another advantage. They blend in. They have camouflage. They're white in the winter. But then when winter passes and there's no more snow on the ground, it's not good to be white. So then they shed that white hair and then they become brown, and then they're still difficult, or brownish, gray, white, all kind of different colors mixed in, but they're still hard to see then. So they can change as they need to, and you see that throughout the environment. So those are our basic characteristics. Cells can do each one of these. Again, if you have any questions, we're going to finish these notes up here, but those are the 8 basic characteristics. We then look at the next page here, and levels of organization. All living things are organized, okay, and we have something called, in biology, something called classification. So, living things are classified. They're organized into groups. So if we have triangles and circles and squares, okay, and diamonds. Okay, yep, not a very good diamond. Yep, need an eraser. So a diamond. So if we were going to organize these shapes into their ones that are similar, we'd put the diamonds all together over here. We'd then come in and circle all the triangles, put them into a group. We'd put the circles into a group, make them gray, and then the squares. It's kind of a little funky, but that's alright. Okay, but we'd classify the squares by themselves, the triangles by themselves, the diamonds by themselves, circle, and so on. Okay, living things are the same way. They're classified in a certain way. And when we look at all living things, if we look at them from the smallest to the largest, the smallest is a cell. And there's really 2 kinds of cells. They are eukaryotic. It's kind of a weird word. And prokaryotic. So these are their 2 main type of cells, eukaryotic and prokaryotic. You're going to learn more about that real soon. And eukaryotic have some basic characteristics. They're multicellular, so they're more than one cell. This is most living things are eukaryotic. Okay. Prokaryotic, though, should have used the same color, but too late. So prokaryotic are single-celled. Okay. And a good example is bacteria. Okay. So bacteria, prokaryotic cells, eukaryotic cells, everything else. Okay. And then we can go start with the smallest here, the cell. Okay. And then we can go off to the largest thing, which is the biosphere. So when you look at cells, cells have, you can go from cells, you can go to tissue, then you can go to organs. So you have cells, group of cells working together to complete a function, or tissue. And you take different tissues such as muscle tissue, epithelial tissue, so on, put them together. They can create an organ, and then organs can make organ systems, and then we have an organism. So we got very simple cell all the way up to an organism, but we can go further. We can then say organisms live in, I'm going to jump a little bit here. We have different types of organisms and in kingdoms, so we can have like animals, plants, blah blah blah, and they can live together in an ecosystem. Yep, you start over here with that. Give me a second. So ecosystems, an ecosystem. So that's all the animals, the interrelated animals, plants, and other things within a community, an area. And then we can take all of those ecosystems and we can really go call them biomes, which are based on which is like an area that has specific plants and climate, and put the biomes, different biomes together to make a biosphere, which is all the living things on the earth. So you go from something very simple as a cell and go all the way out to everything. And that's what we're talking about, level of organization. Okay, we can classify these things. So organisms can be in 6 kingdoms: plants, animals, bacteria or eubacteria, archaebacteria, fungi, and protista. And then we'll study these as we go on. You're going to learn more. We're going to start with the cell. We're going to work our way out to the biosphere as we go through this course. That'll be our first notes. Make sure you fill it in the guided note page. And if you have any questions on these notes and what you need to do, please contact me. Let me stop.